Exclusive contract from Feilu Novel Network Novel. Ninja Realm. Starting with touching the corpse of the Uchiha clan. Crossing the world of ninja and becoming the Uchiha Moon Night in the Uchiha clan, the beginning is the night of annihilation. Fortunately, the divine level corpse touching system has been activated, and the beginning of the game is to touch the entire Uzhibo clan. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for successfully touching the corpse and landing the Air Go You Writing Will I. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for successfully touching the corpse and obtaining shadow level chakra. Ding dong, congratulations to the host for successfully touching the corpse and obtaining the Kaleidoscope Writing Will I. That's it, all the way down the body. Who else is my opponent? Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. System Awakens. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Hiss, my head hurts so much. Uzhibo Yeue sat up from the ground with his head covered, and a strange and familiar memory emerged from the depths of his mind, constantly stimulating his brain. In addition to his headache, he couldn't help but wonder, shouldn't I die now? The masked man who suddenly broke into the police force, his body that seemed to ignore attacks like a ghost, his emotionless gaze, and the pain of not cutting his throat still vividly remembered him. According to common sense, he will undoubtedly die if his throat is cut off. However, the familiar room in front of him and the real swelling sensation in his brain told him that he was not dead. At this moment, the memory in my mind finally stopped emerging. As Yi Yu was about to think about why she could still survive, a warning sound suddenly sounded in his ear. Scan current world information, system loading. Successfully loaded, open host property board, host. Uzhibo Night Moon Age. 13 Blood Inheritance Limit. Writing Will Eyes, San Go Yu, Ability. Shadow Clone Technique, Uzi Wave Flow Swordsmanship, Fire Escape Heohukyu Technique, Thunder Escape Earthwalk Chakra. 1.5 Calories, Thunder, Fire, Yin, Strength Evaluation. Elite Shangren. Suddenly, an inexplicable system appeared, constantly transmitting information to him, causing the mind of Night Moon, whose headache had just eased, to once again fall into chaos. After a long time, after digesting the memory and the information transmitted by the system, Night Moon finally understood his current situation. He is a time traveler, and the one who took him through was the system that had just been loaded. His past life was an ordinary person on a blue planet in another world. And in this life, he was a member of the Uchiha clan in the manga Naruto from his previous life. His father was a commoner and his mother was an elite member of the Uchiha clan. However, both of them sacrificed themselves in the war against Warren during the Third World War when Yi Yu was less than a year old. At the beginning of his journey, his memories of his past life did not fully recover, only occasional fragments of memory appeared. Then he began a new life very smoothly, but due to the inexplicable sense of urgency in his heart, he worked very hard from a young age. Until the time period of the original work Uchiha's Annihilation Night, at the age of 13, he had already started the 3 Goyu Sharingan, and his comprehensive strength had reached the level of elite ninja. Whether in the Uchiha clan or in the Kiba clan, he is widely recognized as a genius among geniuses, with fame and strength even stabilizing the Uchiha Itachi who has not yet opened the kaleidoscope. As the captain of the police force, Yi Yu is facing Uchiha Daitu disguised as Ban. At this time, Daitu's strength was even stronger than during the Nine Tails Rebellion. In the rest room, more than 10 members of the Zhongren Guard, including Yi Yu, were at least equally strong. Even if they joined forces, they were easily defeated by him. The Night Moon of this life has received a boxed meal like this. Then, at the moment of his death, the system finally woke up from its slumber, healed the injuries of the Night Moon, and resurrected him again. At the same time, it also released most of the sealed memories of the Night Moon. Ah! Who the hell are you? Why did you invade my Uchiha? No, our attack won't harm him at all. This guy is so strong. Go and ask the clan leader for help. The shouting and killing outside kept coming one after another. You don't need to look at the night moon to know that it was the Uchibo people who were carrying soil inside the massacre guard team. Just before the death of Night Moon, he used his last strength to throw the detonating talisman and destroy the soundproof barrier that enveloped the lounge. Therefore, within the security team, Daitu is no longer able to quietly carry out assassinations. However, Yu did not expect the group of people outside to have any effect, nor did she place any hope on reinforcements. Being so careful with soil, even the restroom where he is located has set up a soundproof barrier. Yu believes that such a cautious soil must have also set up a soundproof barrier for the entire police force. Unless someone can escape from the guard, the outside world will not be able to discover everything that happened to the guard. And with those security team members, it's not that Night Moon looks down on them, it's just that there's a huge gap in strength between the two sides, and no one has any hope of escaping from the land with temporal and spatial pupil techniques. Besides, the Uchiha people outside the police force are also struggling to protect themselves at this time. Really, the night of extermination has already begun, and now we can only forcefully fight back. Yu pinched her forehead with some headache. If my memory had awakened earlier, I wouldn't have suffered this awkward situation either. He had already tried it before, and with his current strength, he couldn't hold up a few moves in front of Dai Tuesday. Not to mention being a member of Uchiha, in addition to carrying soil on the night of extermination, his enemy also had Uchiha Itachi, a filial son. Even worse, there are two old men outside the territory of the Uzhibo tribe, Ape Flying Sun / and Jitsuan Tuanzang, who are staring at them. He cannot deal with the roots and hidden forces under their command. So now, Night Moon can only hope on this pitfall comparison system. I hope your system's ability to trap goods is not too weak. Just use it a little bit. I don't want to die again. Yu took a deep breath and said sternly, "System, let me introduce your features." System responds immediately. This system is a recycling system that can recycle substances recognized by the system and then use them to strengthen the host. Activate the exploration function to automatically explore recyclable substances in the surrounding area. It sounds pretty good. Yu raised her eyebrows and said, "Activate the exploration function." Exploration function has been activated, starting to explore surrounding substances. Found recyclable substances. As soon as the exploration function is activated, the system's prompt sound keeps ringing. So, Yu followed the system's prompts and looked towards the recyclable substances. And the next second, his pupils shrink. It's really interesting. Yiyu's eyes narrowed slightly and her gaze flickered. The recyclable material just discovered by the system turned out to be the bodies of the surrounding security team members. Then, give it a try first. Yu looked at the body closest to him at her feet and said, "Recycle." He is not a sentimental person, and this matter is related to his life and death. He doesn't need to raise that useless unbearable heart. Not to mention, even if these corpses are kept, they will still be subject to research and eye gouging by Tuanzang and others. It's better to use the system for recycling. Even if Night Moon's strength is improved, it can help them seek revenge, right? Start recycling. Recycling successful. Congratulations to the host for obtaining 150 enhancement points, Uzhibo Bloodline, Urguyu Sharingan, Chakra Tuan X1. Host already has Uzhibo blood vessels. System adjustments. Host blood vessel concentration increased. The host has 3 jade riding will eyes. System adjustments. The host's riding will eye pupil strength has been enhanced. Host chakra coagulation enhancement. Chapter 2. Crazy recycling. Step into shadow level. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. As an elite ninja, the omnipotent presence of ninja, physique, and illusion, Yeyue has reached the ultimate control over her body. Therefore, he can instantly perceive any subtle changes in his body. As prompted by the system, after retrieving the tribe member under his feet, Yu could clearly perceive it. His Sharingan pupils increased by 30%, and his chakra inside his body became more condensed than before. The increase in pupil power allows him to use the Sharingan more persistently, and when it reaches a certain level, it can even allow his Sharingan to evolve again. If chakra becomes condensed, it will reduce the consumption of chakra when he releases ninjutsu, and the released ninjutsu power will be even stronger. The improvement of his own Uchiha bloodline made him feel that refining chakras became easier, and the burden of writing chakra eyes on his body was also reduced significantly. As for the 150 enhancement points, in the system's explanation. By consuming different numbers of enhancement points, one can infinitely enhance a certain ability of the Night Moon. The amount of enhancement points obtained depends on the strength of the recovered corpses during their lifetime. Lower endurance provides up to 50 enhancement points, middle endurance provides up to 300, upper endurance provides up to 800, and shadow level starts at 1000 with no limit. After feeling the change in strength, Night Moon's spirit lifted and he said, "I took back what I just said. Your system's functions are like a fortress." After speaking, he turned his head to look at the bodies of the other team members on the ground with enthusiasm. "My strength depends on you all. Start recycling." Just recycling one Zhongren has significantly improved her own strength, and Yue is no longer in a hurry to find a way to escape Uchiha. Naturally, he shifted his gaze to the Kaleidoscope Sharingan, and even the Eternal Kaleidoscope Sharingan. Sacrificed the entire Uchiha, and Yu believes that his strength will definitely reach a terrifying level. At that time, whether it's the soil or the weasel, or the leaves outside the tribe, they will no longer be his threat. Corpses disappeared from the ground one by one, and Night Moon's strength began to rapidly increase. A few minutes later, he could no longer see a corpse under his feet. At this moment, the shouting outside has also stopped. If nothing unexpected happens, Night Moon is the only surviving member of the police force. Night Moon simply wiped off the bloodstains on her lower body and then changed into clean clothes in the rest room. As he changed, he sighed and said, "I really didn't expect that my pupils had grown so much, and there hasn't been a qualitative change yet." The 14 corpses on the ground provided the Night Moon with 5 pairs of 1 Goyu Riding Will eyes, 7 pairs of 2 Goyu Riding Will eyes, and 2 pairs of 3 Goyu Riding Will eyes. This immediately increased the pupil power of the 3 Hook Jade Riding Will eyes of Night Moon by nearly 6 times, but there is still a considerable gap between them and the Kaleidoscope Riding Will eyes. Night Moon speculates that if we only look at the quantity, the pupil power of the kaleidoscope is at least 10 times that of San Goyu. So next, I have to collect the bodies under the cover of dirt. At this point, when it comes to facing the dirt, Night Moon no longer has much sense of urgency. Although he did not activate the Kaleidoscope Sharingan, his overall strength has already reached the shadow level due to Chakra's strong conciseness and systematic evaluation. By the way, after breaking through the above endurance level, throwing away the level of 10-tailed pillar power, there are only 3 divisions. Ordinary shadow level peak, and super shadow level. Between ordinary shadow levels, battles mostly rely on a series of factors such as combat experience, chakrak system, terrain, intelligence, etc. to determine the winner. The peak of shadow level refers to those who are not affected by the above factors in their own strength and can still handle several ordinary shadow levels with ease. As for Chaoying, it refers to Qianshou Zhujian and Uzhibo. The number of people in front of them has no effect, and they can easily rewrite the terrain during battles. Simply put, it means being accompanied by the Great Buddha and 2 people destroying the 4 kingdoms. At this point, Night Moon's strength belongs to the ordinary shadow level, and in his speculation, there is an unsolvable, divine power, with soil, which is definitely considered the peak level of shadow level. So for safety reasons, Night Moon is still preparing to use enhancement points to further enhance its strength. At this point, the enhancement point of Night Moon is already 2,560 points, and it takes 1,500 points to enhance his most skilled Uchiha Flow Swordsmanship, A. The rest can also enhance a few more ninjutsu skills. So Night Moon without hesitation strengthened all the abilities that could be strengthened once, leaving only 60 enhancement points in an instant. After finishing all this, he strode towards the outside of the building. At this point, the shouting outside has stopped. Obviously, Daitu has already taken care of everyone in the guard except for Yi Yu. As he walked, Yi Yu whispered to himself, "I hope that guy with soil won't be insatiable and take away all the writing will eyes." Bringing soil to participate in the massacre of the Uchiha clan is also an idea to seek the Sharingan. However, he should only be interested in those 3 Goyu Sharingan, and only those Sharingan can allow him to use the forbidden spell, Ianaki, given to him by Uchiha. So Night Moon doesn't expect there to be 3 remaining Jade Will Eyes outside. But I'm afraid that if I have soil, I'll reach out to other writing Will Eyes, which would cause trouble for the Night Moon. There are over 1,000 people in the Uchiha clan territory. Due to the premeditated rebellion, there are nearly 100 guards on duty in the security team, accounting for 1/3 of the Uchiha combat personnel, all of whom have Sharingan eyes. Night Moon had a premonition that even if all 3 of the 3 Goyu were taken away by the soil, the remaining 1 Goyu and 2 Goyu would be enough to fulfill his wish, allowing him to open the kaleidoscope to write the wheel eye. Quantitative change can also trigger qualitative change. On the way, he also casually collected several corpses lying in the hallway, and increased the pupil power of about 3 pairs of 3-hooked jade. Next, we will face a tough battle. Yi Yu squinted her eyes, placed her hand on the hilt of her sword at her waist, and then stepped out of the police building with her foot raised. Then he saw 50 or 60 corpses lying haphazardly in the small courtyard outside. And with soil, he was bending down to grab the Sharingan of one of the corpses. Daitu, who was being watched, quickly reacted. He stood up and looked at Yi Yu. When he saw Yi Yu's familiar face again, his pupils shrank instantly. "Is it you?" Yi Yu claims to be the first genius of Uchiha, so Daitu, who decided to participate in the Night of Extermination, naturally has some understanding. However, Daitu clearly remembers that he solved Night Moon as soon as he entered the police force. And the reason why his assassination operation was exposed was because the dying Night Moon destroyed the soundproof barrier he had made. But now, Night Moon has stood in front of him intact again. And looking at the intact eyes of the Night Moon is not the reason for using Izanagi. Hee. Yi Yu sneered and said, "Why, you seem surprised that I'm not dead." Chapter 3. The kaleidoscope finally opened. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It really surprised me. After a moment of surprise, the earthy tone suddenly became plain. "I didn't expect that you, who had your throat cut, could still live." He really didn't expect the resurrection of the Night Moon, but after a brief surprise, he regained his composure. Since he can kill Yi Yu once, then he can naturally kill him a second time. Before Yi Yu could speak, he continued, "But it's okay. I'll just kill you again. This time, I will just cut off your head." Yi Yu couldn't see the expression behind the earth mask, but according to the earth tone, he was completely underestimated. Hee. You really look down on others. Night Moon pursed her lips and then waved her hand. The corpses within 10 meters around him disappeared instantly, accounting for half of the total number of corpses in the courtyard. Oh. Collecting their bodies. Shaking his head with a hint of mockery, a pair of sickles with iron chains at the tail appeared in his hands. You collect their bodies, but no one helps you collect them. In my words, it seems as if Night Moon is already a dead person. Night Moon ignored the soil and after a moment, he suddenly closed his eyes and sighed, "So, the villain died from talking too much. You have missed the best opportunity to kill me in this life." Just as the earth was filled with doubts, the Night Moon suddenly opened its eyes again. I saw the 3-hooked jade in his eyes spinning wildly, and in an instant, they merged into a unique kaleidoscope pattern. Is this a kaleidoscope, will I? Upon seeing this, Tutu's pupils immediately shrank, and he immediately understood what Yi Yu had just said. Seeing so many people dying in front of me, the stimulating night moon opened the kaleidoscope writing will I. Unconsciously, an endless regret suddenly appeared in the heart of Dai Tuesday. Why did you just say so many fake words? Alright now, witnessing the rise of a powerful enemy if it comes to how strong a kaleidoscope is, Daitu has the most say. He in front of the awakening kaleidoscope and after awakening are simply two people. His incredible, divine power gives him the confidence to look down on the ninja world at the moment of awakening. After all, even if he can't fight, no one can stop him when he runs away. So before understanding the pupil surgery of Night Moon, he directly raised the threat level of Night Moon to the same level as Itachi in his heart. He suffered from the shortcomings of Itachi's pupillary technique and monthly reading. Even with a kaleidoscope, he was still pulled into the world of illusion and monthly reading for a moment. If the outside world hadn't activated his divine power in advance, he would definitely have been easily killed by Itachi at the moment of being controlled. The matter is tricky. The dirt under the mask furrowed his brow deeply. Is this the Sharingan of the kaleidoscope? Compared to the previous Sangoyu, it's simply a world of difference. Night Moon felt the amplification brought to him by the kaleidoscope, and due to system reasons, he perfectly controlled it at the moment of its evolution. At this moment, the world in his eyes has undergone earth-shattering changes compared to before. And the kaleidoscope writing will I comes with two pupil techniques, which did not disappoint Yi Yu. Perhaps it is because his kaleidoscope evolved by fusing the pupil power of countless ordinary writing will eyes, resulting in two pupil techniques in his eyes. The left eye is an enhanced version of insight, and the right eye is a replicated enhanced version. And with the enhanced insight ability, Night Moon can easily see through her weaknesses, which can be considered a weakened version of the dead eye. As for the enhanced replication ability, in addition to being able to replicate various ninjutsu techniques, as long as the pupil power is sufficient, it can even replicate other kaleidoscope pupil techniques. The kaleidoscope of Night Moon can be called the most perfect auxiliary eyes. This also breathed a sigh of relief for Yi Yu. Fortunately, his pupil technique is not the kind of garbage that controls ninja tools as believed. Otherwise, he would be embarrassed to use it in front of others. Especially in front of other owners of kaleidoscope will eyes, they may be mocked and say, I have never seen such a garbage kaleidoscope before. Next, it's time for revenge. Yi Yu looked at Dai Tuesday. At this time, Dai Tu had no intention of launching an attack first due to his unknown knowledge of the Night Moon's pupil technique. Instead, he was vigilant in watching the Night Moon and preventing her from using her pupil technique to launch a surprise attack. Seeing this, Yi Yu decided to use the system to first explore herself and the soil. Host. Uzhibo Night Moon Blood Inheritance Boundary. Kaleidoscope writing will I, breaking the arrogance, copying, ninjutsu. Fire escape. The art of Heihokyu, Uzi wave flow swordsmanship, thunder escape. Earth walk chakra. Shadow level peak, wind, fire, thunder, water, earth, yin, yang, strength evaluation. Normal shadow level name. Uzhibo Daitu blood inheritance limit. Kaleidoscope writing will I, divine power, intermediate immortal body ninjutsu. Izanagi, 3-go jade, Muduan's stick insertion technique, Muduan's Hell's Rebellion, Hueduan's huge fireball technique, Hueduan's storm dance chakra. Shadow level peak, fire, water, earth, yin, yang, strength evaluation. Normal shadow level. Peak shadow level, note. Peak shadow level when divine power is not cracked, as expected by Yi Yu, Dai Tu's strength has reached its peak at the shadow level. Except for a few people or objects who can restrain divine power, Dai Tu is considered invincible from birth. However, Yi Yu is not discouraged. The more powerful the divine power is, the happier he will be. After all, it will soon be his pupil surgery. Dai Tu, just obediently demonstrate Shinwei to me. Yi Yu raised his hand and in the blink of an eye, the seal was formed. Then he moved forward and exhaled. Fire escape. The art of hail woke you. In an instant, a golden fiery fireball with a diameter of nearly 10 meters rushed towards the soil. The terrifying temperature it contains, even if it is more than 10 meters away from the soil, still gives the soil a feeling of being burned. To be precise, it's not a feeling because the dusty hair has already started to curl up. What a terrifying escape. You can't carry it hard. Without any hesitation, Daitu directly activated the void and entered the divine power space. After a moment, the blazing fireball passed through the virtual shadow left by the soil and crashed straight into the gate of the guard. Boom boom. After a loud bang, the wall where the guard gate is located has turned into scorched earth. At the same time, Daitu suddenly turned his head, and then his face suddenly changed. He was destroyed in the barrier set up by the police. Is this your true purpose? Turning back with soil, the eyes that looked towards the night moon were already filled with anger. Yi Yu shook her head and then suddenly raised the corner of her mouth. My purpose is more advanced than you imagine. At the moment when the barrier shattered, he also successfully replicated to divine power. Although the pupil power of the kaleidoscope instantly lost 1/3, it couldn't suppress the joy in Yi Yu's heart. After all, unlike other kaleidoscope owners, his pupil power can be restored by recycling the Sharingan eye. Thinking about it this way, the night moon is like picking up a temporal and spatial pupil technique for nothing. Chapter 4. The suddenly appearing spring, choosing to escape. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. But do you think this can stop me? Daitu suddenly snorted coldly and said, the Uchiha clan is attempting to launch a rebellion, and the high-ranking officials of Kiba are already aware of this. I only took action on someone's behalf this time. There is still someone familiar to you who is slaughtering the Uchiha people in the Uchiha tribe's territory. Looking at the pretended mysterious soil, Yi Yu directly exposed it and said, are you talking about a weasel? How do you know? The corner of his mouth under the earth mask couldn't help but twitch, giving him a feeling that everything was being seen through by the night moon. I don't seem to have the need to answer you. Yi Yu drew her sword and pulled a sword flower. And once I finish solving you, I will naturally go to meet the filial son of the weasel. Speaking, the figure of the night moon instantly disappeared from the original place, and after a few flashes, it had already arrived at the side with soil. He lifted his sword and made a sweep, aiming straight at the neck with dirt. However, the body with soil seemed to be non-existent, and Night Moon's sword pierced through the soil. At the same time, due to inertia, Night Moon's body also collided with the soil. Subsequently, the Night Moon and the soil overlapped and quickly parted after a moment. And in the moment when the two completely separated, Daitu had a movement. I saw him lift the sickle in his hands and then pull it suddenly, causing the connected iron chains behind the sickle to straighten. I won. A low, earthy voice sounded, and then the night moon was tightly entangled by iron chains. What if the kaleidoscope is turned on? Without awakening, the pupil technique still has no effect. Daitu suddenly turned around, and at the same time, he lifted his sickle with both hands and without hesitation, slashed towards Yi Yu's neck and waist. After you die, your kaleidoscope will belong to me. In his earthy eyes, there was a lot of satire, and in his eyes, the night moon had no chance of survival. And all of this was seen by Uzhibo who had just arrived. Night moon. Seeing Yi Yu about to die under the sickle of Daitu, Quan couldn't help but scream out in surprise. He raised his hand to Daitu and saw several swords in his hand. However, it was of no use. The sickle with dirt was about to touch the night moon, and even cut off a few fluttering hair, which was not something that the sword she threw in her hand could stop. Quan couldn't bear to close her eyes, and the three Goyu in her Sharingan's eyes began to rotate rapidly. However, at this moment, the situation suddenly changed again. The one who died is you. Yi Yu suddenly shouted loudly. Divine power. Night Moon's body seemed to turn into a vortex, and the surrounding space instantly began to twist and collapse. Under Dai Tu's frightened gaze, first the iron chains that bound the Night Moon, then the two sickles, and then Dai Tu's arms holding the sickles in the blink of an eye, the twisted space will completely devour the soil. Ah! 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 After a mournful scream, only the bloodstain at the foot of the Night Moon proved that the soil had once existed. However, after finishing all of this, Yi Yu did not relax, but suddenly came to the side of the spring. Great! Yeyue, you're okay. It's really great. The inexplicable spring immediately fell into the arms of Yi Yu, and without anyone knowing, the Goyu in her eyes also stopped spinning. Don't worry, I'll be fine. Yi Yu gently wiped away the tears from the corner of Quan's eyes. In this life, if there is no important person in Uzhibo, then it must be Quan. The two have similar backgrounds, both of whom were married by their mothers to outsiders and lived outside the clan when they were very young. However, compared to Yi Yu's parents who both died, Quan still has a mother to accompany her. Due to the reason that Uchiha married an outsider, within the proud Uchiha clan, Yeyue and Izumi, as descendants, have actually been greatly neglected. So when they were young, the two of them were attracted to each other, which can be considered as a big game for the Plum Blossom Foot Horse. The memories of the past life awakened by the Night Moon do not mean that he will reject the memories of this life. The memories of the two lives are perfectly integrated. But now is not the time to get along quietly with Quan. Night Moon looked around cautiously and said, the battle is not over yet. Quan raised his head in confusion, but still released the Night Moon and stood beside him in a combat posture. How cautious. I even suspect that you have all my information. Accompanied by the slightly resentful voice of Dai Tu, his figure appeared 10 meters ahead of the Night Moon. Just at this moment, he has lost his previous composure. His arms disappeared, and the empty cuffs were dripping with blood, looking extremely miserable. Upon seeing this, Quan instinctively threw out the bitter nothingness in his hand. Bang! However, Kuwa's body, which was covered in dirt, penetrated the wall behind him without causing any harm. Don't worry, he's just a dog of the black sheep at this moment. The Night Moon held Quan's hand and immediately calmed Quan, who was quite nervous. He has no intention of continuing to take action. Just now, he was able to injure Dai Tu, relying entirely on the unequal information gap between the two sides. Dai Tu has a very one-sided understanding of the Night Moon, especially after the Night Moon opens its kaleidoscope, while the Night Moon knows Dai Tu's abilities like the back of her hand. Under the information gap, it is only then that Dai Tu was defeated so quickly and so miserably. But now that the Night Moon has shown its divine power, Dai Tu will definitely not be easily fooled again. What was that just? Divine power. How could you do this? Breathing heavily with soil, the tone was full of suspicion and uncertainty. Yi Yu gave a cold smile and said, "Hee, I don't need to tell you." Although Yi Yu didn't say anything, Dai Tu still thought to himself, is it your kaleidoscope? I didn't expect you to be able to awaken the temporal and spatial pupil technique too. Upon hearing this, Yi Yu pouted and did not intend to explain, but instead mocked and said. Stop talking nonsense. Aren't you going to kill me? Aren't you going to take my kaleidoscope? You're coming over. Dai Tu has divine power, enough to use it to leave before Yi Yu approaches, so since Dai Tu cannot be left, Yi Yu naturally needs to mock a few more words. Don't be too arrogant. Under the mockery of the Night Moon, Dai Tu began to grit his teeth and his eyes were filled with anger. Although you accidentally hurt me, you don't have the ability to keep me. Losing the mystery of divine power, and even the Night Moon possesses this pupil technique, she had the idea to leave here when taking the earth. After all, if it weren't for his timely use of Izanagi just now, he might have really died. I still have to complete the unlimited monthly study plan and create a world with Lin, but I can't waste my life here with him. Pushi. Yi couldn't help but sneer, "Are you starting to think about running away now? Did you become a waste without the protection of divine power?" Suppressing the anger in his heart with soil, he no longer hesitated since he had decided to withdraw first. Suddenly, a vortex appeared in his right eye, gradually devouring his body. "We'll see you again next time." Dai Tu still wanted to leave behind a few seen words, but Yi didn't wait for him to finish speaking, so she raised her hand and threw out a kuwu to interrupt him. "There's so much nonsense." Chapter 5. Another pair of kaleidoscopes blooming. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Shenwei, what a bug-level existence. Yi sighed at the power of divine power, then shook her head again. Unfortunately, even if there is no second fourth generation in the world now, you have personally left a fatal hidden danger for it. Next time we meet, I will definitely give you a surprise. Boom. The night moon is sighing, but suddenly in the distance, flames are shining everywhere. Someone is using a large fire escape. Then a fierce collision of iron tools rang out. At this moment, Quan also regained consciousness and immediately asked, "Night Moon, what's going on here?" The night of extermination has come to this point, and Yi did not hide the necessity of the spring. He explained. Because in recent years, Uchiha has been subjected to various unfair treatments in Kiba, and even his clan's territory has been relocated to the current edge of Kiba. After several unsuccessful protests, the majority of his clan members have decided to launch a coup. This news was eventually reported by Uchibo Jishue to Ape Flying Sun / and he decided to use his kaleidoscope pupil technique other heavenly gods to change the clan leader and several other leaders who wanted to launch a rebellion. Surprisingly, there's such a thing happening. Quan was stunned. Among the Uchiha clan, only the majority of the 300 combatants, with Sharingan enabled and above medium ninja strength, were secretly plotting a coup. Ordinary members of the clan and underage children were unaware of this. Boom. There was another explosion. And after this explosion, battles quickly erupted in multiple places within the Uchiha clan. Obviously, the assassination plan of Itachi Daitu has been a complete failure. Moreover, with so many simultaneous battles occurring in various places, it must be that the group hiding outside cannot sit still and join the battle with their roots. Seeing this, Yi picked up the spring and said, "Let's go. Go to Aunt Yi's place, I'll explain it to you on the way." And Quan suddenly felt a bit shy when he was picked up by Yi, but this shyness was soon suppressed by concerns about his mother's safety. Yi continued, "These high-level officials, like Jinsho Kaijian, regard Uchiha as a fierce beast, especially one named Tuanzang. While hating Uchiha, they also spy on his power. Jishue was secretly taken away by him with a kaleidoscope. Then, the escaped water stop met with Uchiha Itachi in secret. Yi did not conceal anything and directly informed Quan of the development of the whole matter, especially the young scheme exerted by the senior management of Muyi on Uzhibo. If Uchiha can tolerate all kinds of unfair treatment, then Tuanzang and his team will naturally not be able to openly attack Uchiha. But Tuanzang accurately grasped the arrogant and unwilling to bow character of the Uchiha people, so the occurrence of the night of extermination is inevitable. So, the water stop plan was wrong from the beginning. If the hostility of the high-ranking officials towards Uchiha remains unchanged, then Uchiha will never be able to truly integrate into Kiba. If he chooses to use the other heavenly gods on the high-level of Kiba, he may have already achieved peace in his heart. Quan is a kind girl, and Yeyue chose to tell her all the truth in order to break Quan's last bit of fantasy about Mai in his heart. The people of Uchiha, whether they are always young or have a heart for Kiba, have already been on Kiba's must-kill list. Starting from the night of the extinguishing clan, Uchiha and Kiba stood completely opposite. So, Yi doesn't want Quan to be hurt by Muyi for her inner kindness in future battles. Quan did not disappoint Yeyue's hard work. Out of her trust in Yeyue, she extinguished the last bit of unrealistic imagination in her heart after Yue finished speaking about these things. Especially when her mother is still on the brink of death, that's her last relative. Quan whispered, "Mom, you must not have any trouble. I will come over to save you soon." Upon hearing these words, Yu couldn't help but accelerate her pace. In the original work, Itachi was killed from the edge of the Uchiha tribe's territory all the way to the center's doorstep, so after several flashes of the instant body technique, the area where the home is located is close in front of us. Sure enough, when the night moon arrived with the spring, unlike the fiery battle in the distance, the vicinity of home was peaceful. "There is still a faint smell of rust floating in the air, Mom." Quan felt uncomfortable and wanted to rush towards his own home. But before he could take action, he was grabbed by the night moon. In Quan's puzzled gaze, Yu just whispered. 1, 2. A total of 9 mice. Whoosh. 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 As soon as the words fell, dozens of broken air sounds suddenly rang out. Yu just sneered disdainfully at this and said, "Playing ninja in front of Uzhibo. After speaking, raise your hand and throw out 3 bitter nothings." Bang bang bang. After a few collisions, more than 10 Kowu-wielding swords fell weakly, while the 3 Kowu thrown out by the night moon still lost their momentum. Pushi. Ah. The sound of the blade piercing into the flesh followed by 3 painful groans. The few people hidden in the shadows did not hide and jumped out when they saw the failed attack. At this moment, only 7 of the 9 people were left, and one of them had a Kowu inserted into his left arm. Uzhibo's remaining sins, kill. Without any hesitation, those few people were like killing machines, shooting straight at the night moon and the 2 from all directions. "Oh, the mice at the root. Instantly solve you all." Night moon snorted coldly, then pushed the spring towards her doorstep. He had already explored and there was no one hiding there. Then he raised his hand and instantly formed the seal. Fire escape. The art of Heiau Wokyu. The person at the root reacted quickly, and a person skilled in water escape immediately formed a seal to respond. Shui done. But he hadn't finished printing yet, and the next moment he froze in place. What kind of fire escape is this? His eyes were not at all the grand fireballs he had imagined, but a sea of flames shrouded in a radius of tens of meters. This kind of fire escape cannot be resisted without 7 or 8 people working together to perform water escape. It's too late. The other few roots also froze in place, and the idea had just flashed through their minds before being engulfed by the flames. Ah! After a scream, the sea of fire disappeared, and those roots also disappeared with it. Yu nodded in satisfaction and said, "The enhanced Haohua ball has really good power." His chakra is already very concise, and coupled with its use of a system to further enhance the fireball technique now has 2 forms. One type is 2 or 3 times the size of an ordinary fireball, but its temperature is dozens of times that of an ordinary fireball. Another option is that the temperature increase is not significant, but the surgical range is very wide. If Night Moon is willing to consume chakra, it can also increase the temperature and range of the spell at the same time. It can be said that after mastering the enhanced Heiau Wokyu, Yue no longer needs to learn other fire dungeons. Mother. Suddenly, the spring that entered home one let out a mournful cry. Is it really like this? Night Moon let out a sigh and then quickly entered the room. At this moment, Quan was lying on the body of her mother, crying in agony. At the same time, an inexplicable dark power began to emanate from her body. This power is very familiar to Night Moon. He couldn't help but exclaim in surprise, "This is Awakening Kaleidoscope." Chapter 6, Let's Go, I'll Take You to Kill. You are listening at novelfull.audio. You never expected that Quan's talent would be so terrifying. But upon careful consideration, he was relieved that Quan had a deep affection for her parents. During the Nine Tails Rebellion, at the age of only 5, Quan witnessed his father's death and opened his Sharingan. In the original work, she is considered the youngest eye-opener in recorded history, and her talent goes without saying. But what Yi Yu didn't know was that just when he was designing the soil, Quan almost opened a kaleidoscope for him. However, since Quan has opened a kaleidoscope, Yi Yu can feel the level of despair in Quan's heart at this moment. But he had never experienced these things, whether in his past or present life. He was alone, so at this moment he didn't know how to comfort Quan. Yi Yu just squatted down, placed her hand on Quan's back, and watched Quan vent her inner sadness, silently comforting her. For a long time, Quan stopped crying and looked up at the night moon. Her eyes were red and tears were still hanging from the corners, while in her pupils, 3 hooked jade had been replaced by 3 cherry blossom-shaped kaleidoscope patterns. Quan spoke hoarsely, "Night moon. I don't have a mother anymore." Yi Yu remained silent for a moment before gently embracing the spring. "You still have me. I want to avenge my mother. I want to question Itachi why she did this. I want to question the 3rd generation Hokage." The spring murmured in the embrace of the night moon. "I'll accompany you." From Quan's deep words, Yi Yu felt anger and helplessness. He kept telling Quan that she still had him, in order to alleviate Quan's pain. Suddenly, Yi Yu remembered something and immediately supported Jing Quan's shoulder, saying, "Quan, don't be sad. I think of a technique that can resurrect Aunt Yi Yu." "Really? Really?" Quan's eyes lit up and he stared at the night moon with wide eyes. Yi Yu nodded firmly and said, "It's true. There is also an eye above the kaleidoscope, which is the legendary reincarnation eye. The reincarnation eye has a pupil technique called the reincarnation innate technique, which can resurrect dead people. These are all recorded on the stone tablets in the ancestral land of Uchiha. The eye of reincarnation." Quan murmured before asking, "How can we evolve the kaleidoscope into the eye of reincarnation?" Yi Yu smiled and said, "It's very complicated to do this, but I have confidence in evolving my eyes into reincarnation eyes within 5 years. And even if evolution fails, there is still a pair of reincarnation eyes in the ninja realm, and I will take it in my hands when the time comes." With the system in hand, if all the deceased members of Uchiha were to be collected, Yeyue felt that his eyes could at least reach the level of an eternal kaleidoscope. By gathering enough reinforcement points, he can easily evolve his eyes into reincarnation eyes, even reaching above them. As for the issue of using the innate technique of reincarnation and losing one's own life, he believes that once his own strength reaches a certain level, this problem will naturally be solved. And there is also the reincarnation eye on the body of that long gate, which he naturally won't let go of, but that will also have to wait for his strength to reach a certain level. He still needs time to break in with the kaleidoscope. Night Moon, who has read the original work, does not want to rely solely on Sharingan to fight like Sasuke. Opening Eternity is just enough to reach the peak of shadow-level combat power. In the eyes of Yi Yu, no matter what level the Sharingan is at, it is only a part of its own combat power, not all of its own combat power. At this moment, Quan had changed his recent sadness and emitted new hope from the bottom of his heart. Yi Yu pulled her up and said, "Put away Aunt Yi Yu's body, we still have to go seek revenge for her." Quan nodded and then took out a storage scroll to collect his mother's body on the ground. Although he already had the feeling of resurrecting his mother, Quan still had a feeling of wanting to cry at this moment. After all, the next time we meet, it will be many years later. Upon seeing this, the night moon embraced the spring and said, "Let's go, I'll take you to kill." Discovered 2 Uchiha waves, go up together. There's no need for the night moon and the other 2 to search. They just walked out of the room and soon encountered a group of roots again. And before Yi Yu could say anything, Quan drew his sword and directly killed those 5 roots. Seeing this, in order to gradually adapt to the power of the kaleidoscope, Yi Yu just watched from the side. And Quan didn't disappoint Yi Yu, she quickly and easily solved the 5 roots. Subsequently, Yu, adhering to the principle of not wasting, looked at the 5 corpses and said, "Recycle." Successfully recovered, congratulations to the host for obtaining. Enhancement Point 1780, Water Escape Water Slug Bullet Art, Earth Escape Earth Flow Wall Art, dot. Upon hearing the system prompt, Yiyu's eyes widened instantly. How could there still be ninjutsu? He immediately inquired with the system and found out that the reason why he had not obtained ninjutsu before was because the souls of the bodies he had collected had all gone to the Pure Land. And the souls of these corpses with roots in front of me are still temporarily present in my body. Simply put, a simple corpse can provide blood stains, veins, and chakras for the night moon, and the soul can provide him with ninjutsu, sorcery, and chakra. Now, it seems like I don't have to just focus on those blood stain owners anymore. The night moon lit up before her eyes, and then instantly formed a seal. The art of shadow clone. The Uchiha tribe's territory has become increasingly chaotic. As expected by Yiyu, after a violent explosion occurred in the guard, Tuanzang led Zhenzhen to kill him in the first place. Hundreds of people at the base divided into small teams to launch an attack, gradually advancing from the edge. Although Uzhibo had already taken precautions at this time, he still failed to form effective resistance against the well-organized base. And most importantly, more than 2/3 of Uzhibo's 300 combat personnel have already been solved by Daitu and Itachi. The remaining few dozen scattered in all directions of the tribe are obviously unable to stop the massacre at the root. The night moon carried the spring and went all the way towards Itachi's home, killing all the occasional roots that appeared on the way under the sword of the spring. Before opening the kaleidoscope, although Quan was Sangoyu, his overall strength was only moderate. And now, as she becomes more proficient in using the kaleidoscope, including her right eye pupil technique, her comprehensive strength has reached that of an elite ninja. This is simply a qualitative leap. Uzhibo is truly a true cheater. By the way, the pupil technique of Quan's right eye is a temporal and spatial pupil technique, and when used, Quan will enter a different space with the enemy at the same time. In a different space, only when one party dies and the other person can go out, and Quan can achieve infinite resurrection in the different space by consuming a large amount of pupil power. Moreover, as the owner of a different space, Quan can also forcibly stop this pupil technique midway, at the cost of consuming a large amount of extra pupil power. This pupillary technique is undoubtedly very powerful. During team battles, it can forcibly pull a person from the opposite side for PK, but if you can't defeat it, you can still play patience and stop. After learning about it, Yiyu could only marvel at Quan's talent, Nyo Bi, and without hesitation, stole this pupil technique. As for the pupil surgery of Quan's left eye, it has not yet awakened, but it is expected to be also a temporal and spatial pupil surgery. So, the two quickly reached Itachi's doorstep. Chapter 7. Spring's Growth, Swordsmanship Breaks Arms. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Looking at the gate of the former clan chief's mansion, the two of them could sense a familiar aura inside. That is the induction between the owners of the same kaleidoscope. Yiyu and Quan exchanged a glance. Just as they were about to cross the wall and enter, the door suddenly opened. Wearing a black dark armor, carrying a sword on his back, wearing a cat face mask around his waist, and a thick stain of blood on his face. It's the Itachi who just killed his parents with his own hands. Night Moon. Spring. Itachi looked up at the two friends in front of him who were similar in age and had also been playmates since childhood. He murmured, "Did you also open a kaleidoscope? It's your words. You do have this talent. Bastard." Quan gritted his teeth and looked at Itachi with a gentle and murderous expression, changing his usual way. "Why did you do this?" Under Quan's angry gaze, Itachi's eyes flashed with a hint of sadness, but his tone remained firm as he said, "This is Uchiha's only path to redemption." Redemption. Do you think this is redemption? Quan looked at Itachi incredulously. Grandma Chun is already over 60 years old. She is so gentle towards her tribe and villagers. Her grandson is only over a year old this year. What's wrong with Grandma Chun? What's wrong with her grandson? And my mother. She's so gentle. As she spoke, Quan began to cry uncontrollably, but her gaze towards Itachi was even more murderous. Damn it, I must kill you. Just as he finished speaking, Quan and Itachi disappeared into the same place. You really have enough impulsiveness. Yi Yu rubbed her forehead with a headache and then said lightly, but it's better to vent well. After speaking, Yi Yu lifted her foot and walked into Itachi's home. He is not worried about Quan. In Quan's pupil technique, it is only possible that she harmed Itachi, and Itachi cannot harm her. For her, at most, it's just a little more pupil power consumption. Searching for the bloody smell, Yue quickly found the bodies of Uzhibo and Fuyue husband and wife. Perhaps sensing the arrival of night moon and spring, Itachi did not have time to tidy up his parents' Sharingan, which also gave night moon an opportunity. Without any hesitation, night moon directly collected the two corpses. Successful recycling. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the 3 Goyu Sharingan, Kaleidoscope Sharingan, Uzhibo bloodline. Subsequently, a powerful force of pupils suddenly appeared, piercing straight into the eyes of Night Moon. His eyes, enveloped by the force of this pupil, felt only a moment of comfort. Vaguely, he seemed to touch a layer of paper, but as he was about to pierce through, that comfort came to a halt. Is it still almost there? Yi Yu opened her eyes and shook her head. The promotion of the kaleidoscope to the eternal kaleidoscope in the original work requires transplanting the eyes of one's own brothers. Perhaps due to the similarity between the mother and the chakra, transplantation will produce a special effect, ultimately forming an eternal kaleidoscope. The connection between the night moon and Mount Fuyue can be traced back 400 to 500 years ago, so naturally no reaction can occur. So, if I want to force the evolution of a kaleidoscope with a huge pupil force, I also need a pair of kaleidoscopes, or dozens of pairs of Sharingan pupils like before. I don't know how the collection from the Shadow Avatar is going. Night Moon will never forget that Tuanzang is also coveting the Sharingan. But it doesn't matter anymore. I'll meet that old guy from Tuanzang sooner or later before I leave. Just grab what he has collected. Night Moon calculated the time, and just as he stepped out of the door, Quan and Itachi appeared again at the same time. As expected, Quan was only slightly panting and left a line of blood and tears in his right eye, without any other harm. But Itachi was miserable, with scars all over his body. His left arm and sleeve had disappeared without a trace. Quan knew that even if he opened the kaleidoscope, his overall strength was far inferior to Itachi, so he decided to take advantage of his ability to revive and launch an attack without caring about any injuries. Under her attack, unaware of Quan's ability to resurrect, Itachi was suddenly attacked by Quan, who pretended to be dead, after cutting off Quan's neck with one blow. His left arm was cut off by Chuani's sword in that situation. However, Itachi's combat talent is also powerful. Despite losing one arm and being unable to use ninjutsu, Quan still cannot take him down and can only add a few scars to his body. Finally, unable to resist, Itachi chose to release the moon reading to Quan, which allowed Quan to lose control of the pupil technique and return to reality. Quan bit his lower lip tightly and said, "I'm sorry, I can't kill him." With a hard blow to the moon reading, even though she used her pupils to block most of the damage, she also consumed a lot and temporarily lost the ability to use her pupils. Itachi has been in the dark for so many years and has extremely rich combat experience. You have already done very well. Yi Yu gently rubbed Quan's head and said, "Leave the rest to me." Quan instructed, "Itachi has a pupil technique that is an illusion technique, very powerful. Be careful." Yue nodded, and naturally understood Itachi's abilities. Then, he looked at Itachi and his gaze instantly turned cold. "Do you still have to persevere? Don't expect your helper anymore, he's even worse off now. Sure enough. Itachi's pupils shrank, and the plan really went wrong from the person who called himself Ban. The injury that can be hit by the night moon is even more serious than mine, he is definitely not the rumored spot. However, the night moon can harm him who possesses temporal and spatial pupil surgery. The kaleidoscope pupil surgery may be very troublesome, so I have to be careful. During Itachi's contemplation, a cold light suddenly flashed before his eyes. In shock, he immediately lifted his sword, but was still knocked out by the night moon. How dare you lose your mind when facing me? Yu sneered and said, from childhood to adulthood, whether it's physical skills, illusion skills, or ninjutsu, you have been steadily suppressed by me. Do you think you can surpass me now that you have opened a kaleidoscope? Itachi gritted his teeth and muttered to himself, in my current state, I can't force myself. So. Monthly reading. Without any hesitation, Itachi directly released his pupillary reading to Night Moon, hoping to create a loophole in Night Moon. And because of continuous use of pupil surgery, his right eye began to leave a line of blood and tears. However, the Night Moon, which was clearly staring at itself, showed no signs of being hit by the spell. His monthly reading was steadily blocked by Yu's pupils, and he couldn't even penetrate Yu's mind. How could it be? Itachi couldn't help but be surprised. His monthly reading was clearly effective for both the soil and the spring, but why didn't it work when he arrived at the night moon? Yu gave a cold smile and said, I'm sorry, my pupil surgery is your natural nemesis. His left eye is specifically designed to address the weaknesses of other surgeries, and even if it's a monthly reading of the pupil, he can forcefully use his pupil strength to resist it. If Itachi wants him to succeed, unless Itachi's pupils exceed his. At this moment, Itachi involuntarily increased his pupils, but Night Moon still stood firmly there. Continuing on, it's up to either of them to see whose pupils are depleted first. Although Yu is not afraid of competing with Itachi in terms of pupil strength, he is not prepared to remain deadlocked like this. Just let you taste your ninjutsu. Chapter 8. The Gap Between Susanohu. You are listening at novelfull.audio. While resisting the reading of the moon, Night Moon also consumed her pupils and instantly stole it, then immediately released it with her right eye towards Itachi. Itachi couldn't even guess that Night Moon could replicate his pupil technique. Unprepared, he directly hit the spell. After a moment of confusion, he arrived at a familiar dark red world. Itachi thought Night Moon had finally hit the jackpot, but in the next moment, he was lifted up by the familiar cross. What is this? Itachi's pupils shrank, and it turned out that Zhongyue was reading himself. Subsequently, Yue appeared directly in front of Itachi, and in her hand, she held the black stick that Itachi was very familiar with. It's really a good pupil surgery. You probably haven't tasted the taste of your own pupil surgery yet, have you? Speaking, Yu thrust the black stick in her hand forward and pierced through Itachi's palm. Ah! 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 The Itachi, who had received pain tolerance training in the dark, screamed in agony, but the Night Moon forcibly increased the sensitivity of his soul by dozens of times. It has to be said that the Night Moon played with moon reading, and was returned to 6 by Itachi. Just receiving this attack, Itachi felt like he was about to faint. According to the development, I should say a line. Yu grinned. In the world of monthly reading, you will spend 3 days, while in the outside world, only a moment will pass. Just 1 second has passed, and you still have 2 days, 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds left. Ah! In reality, in the blink of an eye, Itachi suddenly screamed and knelt down to the ground. His hands tightly covered his eyes, and blood kept dripping from between his fingers onto the ground. Just now, he not only suffered from the torment of the monthly reading on his spirit, but also suffered from the backlash of the failure of the monthly reading spell. Now he can't even maintain the kaleidoscope for the time being, and the kaleidoscope in his right eye has degenerated directly into Sangoyu. You look so pitiful now. Yi Yu sneered and looked at Quan, end him. Quan nodded, took out a handful of Kuwu and held it in his palm. Lei attribute chakra rushed into Kuwu, then threw it vigorously. Kuwu turned into a pillar of light, and in the blink of an eye, he came to Itachi's face, pointing straight at his eyebrows. However, in the next moment, a red chakra light curtain suddenly enveloped the weasel, and then quickly transformed into a huge rib to surround it. Lei Dun painlessly plunged into a bone in his rib and stopped at a point a finger wide from the center of Itachi's eyebrows. Still struggling. Night Moon suddenly drew out her sword in displeasure upon seeing this, and then Chakra rushed in with a sword and slashed at the Itachi. The moment she hit the Itachi on the ribs, she swung it away. In the air, a large number of cracks gradually appeared on the red ribs, but they still barely broke. Finally, the ribs and weasel fiercely collided with the wall behind them, creating a dent in the wall. With the condensed level of Night Moon Chakra, every physical attack is powerful enough to rival the monster power of Gangzhou. Under the crisis of life and death, does awakening requires Waneng? Do you think this is making a movie or writing a novel? Night Moon pulled a sword flower and gracefully inserted the sword into the scabbard around her waist. Since that's the case, let's play with you for a while longer. As he spoke, Itachi had already climbed up from the ground, and now he was bending over, panting heavily. But wrapped around his beard, it gradually began to become complete. First there was a skull, then there were 2 arms. In no time, a half-body, 10 meters high skeleton appeared in front of the Night Moon. What is this? What is this? Quan stared blankly at the scene. Yi Yuetu explained without looking back, this is a must-have skill. Every kaleidoscope will have a pupil technique, and you will use it even if you completely control the kaleidoscope in the future. But now, let me meet him. Night Moon calmly looked at Itachi and said, is this your last resort? Itachi raised his head and panted heavily without answering, but he did indeed consider Susanohu as his last resort. However, it might be good to just die here like this. Suddenly, a thought drifted through Itachi's mind. But soon he shook his head violently and threw the idea out of his mind. I can't die. If I die, no one will be able to protect Sasuke. Whether it's Night Moon or Tuanzang, we won't let him go, will we? Subsequently, Itachi watched the Night Moon with caution, even though he had the ability to act first. As Night Moon said, he has been overshadowed by it in every aspect from childhood to adulthood, which has led him to be extremely cautious when facing it now. Seeing this, Yi Yu shook her head a bit amused and said, just right, let me also try the power of Susanohu. As he spoke, an orange substance emerged from his body, and in the blink of an eye, an orange skull no smaller than a weasel shrouded the Night Moon. Surprisingly, there's not much pressure. Yi Yu raised her eyebrows, then let's keep changing. As he spoke, meridians and flesh began to appear on the skull above his head, and soon he was wrapped in a layer of chakra coat. Moreover, a sword appeared in Susanohu's right hand. Susanohu. Second form. Hiss, I feel a little bit, but the power is too weak. Keep going. Susanohu has undergone another transformation. This time, a thick layer of Woodiangu armor envelopes Susanohu. At the same time, a huge mirror resembling a shield appeared on Susanohu's left hand, and a gourd was added to his waist. This is exactly what Yi Yu just obtained from Itachi's Susanohu. 8 close mirrors, 10 fist swords. And what he himself needs to wear is the Buddha soul sword in his right hand. Yi Yu nodded and said, the power of the third form has barely met my requirements. After speaking, he looked at Itachi again and said, so what about you? Can you continue to change? Itachi stared blankly at the Night Moon, which was nothing new. He was once again crushed by the Night Moon. At this point, his kaleidoscope had reached its limit, and his right eye had just recovered from Sangoyu to a kaleidoscope. Although he wouldn't go blind, his pupil power had also been depleted by more than half. The reason for the rapid loss of his pupil power was that he had intended to use lunar readings on the night moon before, but not only failed, but also received a great backlash. Vaguely, he could already feel that his vision had declined a bit. No, we must fight quickly and make a quick decision. Itachi gritted his teeth tightly and forcefully used his will to activate a little more of his pupils, barely allowing Susanohu to reach his second form. It seems that you only have this level now. Yiyu shook her head, then suffer to death. Speaking, Yiyu's Susanohu decisively swung the Buddha's soul sword in his hand, and Itachi quickly transformed into an 8-legged mirror to resist. Bang! After the violent collision, the two Susanos remained unchanged, and Yeyue looked relaxed. Only the weasel spat out a big mouthful of blood and then half knelt on the ground. If you had given up resistance earlier, why would you still suffer from this torture? Night Moon's control requires Susanohu to lift the Buddha Imperial Soul Sword again. This time, there are even several Goyu around the sword body. Then, another sword swung. Chapter 9. The First Pot King of Hokage. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Itachi, who was kneeling on the ground, was on the verge of fainting, but his strong survival consciousness still allowed him to control Susanohu and lift the 8 nostrils mirror. Bang! The sword collided with the mirror and suddenly emitted an even more violent explosion. This time, Itachi's Susanohu and himself were directly smashed into the ground, forming a large pit several meters deep. It's not over yet. Before Itachi could breathe a sigh of relief, the stalemate between the sword and the mirror changed again. I saw the few jade hooks surrounding the Buddha's soul sword suddenly emit a dazzling light, and then explode with a loud bang. That is Goyu from Yazaka, and Susanohu has extremely strong long-range attack ability. Targeted blasting, and specifically targeting the weakest point of the 8-nose mirror, coupled with the constant pressure exerted by the Buddha's soul sword, Itachi, who already had insufficient pupils, could no longer persist. After a shattering sound, the 8 nostrils mirror shattered. Itachi's beard was exposed straight in front of the Buddha Imperial Soul Sword, and then, hiss. With one sword, Itachi's Susanohu was slashed in half diagonally. Wow! At the same time, the weasel, which had been backfired, once again spat out a large mouthful of blood. Then, he collapsed to the ground and fell into a faint in an instant. Night Moon controlled Susanohu and easily lifted Itachi to the tip of her sword. Hee. They all told you not to persist anymore. Why suffer this pain? Itachi had completely lost his resistance, but the Night Moon did not disperse and instead scanned the surroundings. We've all been here for so long, won't we come out and see each other? Upon hearing this, Quan immediately looked around vigilantly. Duh. A black shadow appeared. Duh. 2, 3, duh. More and more black shadows appeared from around, densely packed with at least 400 to 500 people. After these people appeared, they directly formed a closed circle with a radius of 20 meters around the Night Moon and Spring. When these roots stopped, another one-eyed old man with a cane and a bandage wrapped around one arm walked up from behind. Many people. Quan was shocked in her heart, she didn't notice any of these people before they appeared. But soon she breathed a sigh of relief and looked at the Night Moon with a respectful expression on her face. Fortunately, there is the Night Moon. Yiyu threw the weasel directly at the foot of the spring, and then looked at Tuanzang with a cold expression. So many people have come. It seems that you have taken out all the secrets at the root. Tuanzang, old thief. The first time Tuanzang brought these roots over, he had already discovered it. But at that time he was bloodily abusing Itachi, so he didn't expose it. But now that Itachi has been solved, it's time for him to meet this 5.5 generation Hokage. Upon hearing that this old man was Tuanzang, Quan was shocked and looked at Tuanzang with a murderous intent in his eyes. She did not forget the truth that Night Moon had told her before. This old man was one of the initiators of planning the night of extermination. Uzhibo. What a jealous bloodline. Tuanzang looked at the night moon and then at the spring, and as his gaze swept over their kaleidoscope, he couldn't help but show a hint of greed. First was the water stop, then the weasel, and now you two have appeared. Sure enough, it is still the safest way to eliminate unstable factors like Uzhibo. Hehe, unstable factors. Tuanzang's gaze naturally couldn't escape Yi Yu's gaze, and he couldn't help but sneer. You can put away your greedy gaze before saying this. We are not two foolish people, Jishui and Itachi. As she spoke, Yi Yu manipulated Susanohu to stab the Itachi at the foot of Tingchuan with her sword. In theory, the Itachi now stands on the same front as you, and you can actually watch him lose his resistance when I hit him. Are you confident that you can catch us all without his help? Humph. Tuanzang used his cane to pestle the ground, leaving a hole in the ground immediately. Uchiha, who is naturally evil, is not worthy to be with me. For the stability of Kiba, every Uchiha man will not let go. Whether it's the weasel slaughtering the tribe or you killing the weasel, it saves me a lot of effort. Yi Yu shook her head upon hearing the words and said, it seems that you are really confident. Speaking, Susanohu directly threw out several Goyu of Yasaka. However, when Tuanzang saw this, his face remained expressionless. Defense. Subsequently, several prepared roots slapped the ground with both hands. Tuduan, Tuliu wall. In the next moment, an extremely thick earthen wall rose in front of Tuanzang. Yasaka's Goyu collided with the earthen wall, instantly blasting the entire earthen wall with holes and holes. After a burst of sand and dust, the earthen wall spread out in a ball, but it also successfully protected Tuanzang and others. Confident yet cautious, truly an old thing who has lived for so many years. Yasaka's Goyu was blocked, and Yeyue did not lose. It was originally his casual strike. If the root of the entire deployment cannot even stop this, Yi Yu thinks he can push the wooden leaves horizontally now. After blocking the attack of the night moon, Tuanzai's confident expression on his face couldn't help but become even stronger. He said with a smile, Night Moon, I have long heard of your name as a genius. Speaking of which, I once invited you to join Root, but unfortunately you refused. Look at the people around here. The weakest among them is also the elite of Zhongren, you have no chance of survival. But I am a person who cherishes talent, and now I am willing to give you another chance. As long as you join the Root and swear to be loyal to me to the death, I am willing to give you and your little girlfriend a chance. It is said that they want to take them as subordinates, but the true purpose of Tuanzang is self-evident, and Yi Yu knows it well. Susanohu gradually disappeared, and Yeyue came to Quan's side in an instant. Seeing this, the smile on Tuanzang's face intensified, it seems that you are. But before he could finish speaking, Yi Yu disdainfully interrupted, surrender to you. You're not worthy. Tuanzang's face instantly turned black. Whoosh! Whoosh! At this moment, several piercing sounds rang out, and then 3 selves appeared in front of Yi Yu. This is. Tuanzai's eyes narrowed. He could see the appearance of a shadow clone of the night moon, but he couldn't see through what the night moon was doing. I saw the 3 avatars each handing night moon a scroll, and then with a bang, it turned into smoke and disappeared. Looking at the 3 scrolls in Yi Yu's hand, Tuanzang suddenly felt a sense of unease in his heart. Cautiously, he shouted without hesitation, attack together and deal with both of them immediately. Hee. It's already late. Yi Yu gave a cold smile and then thought to herself, recycle. The ones in those 3 scrolls are nothing else, they are the corpses of the Uchiha clan collected by his previous shadow clone. He had already learned from the disappearing shadow avatar that at least 30 or 40 pairs of Sharingan had not been taken by Tuanzang inside. These are enough to make him successfully advance to the eternal kaleidoscope. That's also why he's willing to keep talking nonsense for so long. Chapter 10. In front of Gouda, there is no trace of the number of people. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. After recovering Fuyue's body, Yeyue's kaleidoscope had reached a critical point, and the Sharingan in the scroll were enough to advance him to the eternal kaleidoscope. As for evolving from an eternal kaleidoscope to a reincarnation eye, it is not something that can be achieved simply by accumulating pupil power. When he successfully possesses the eternal kaleidoscope, an ordinary kaleidoscope will be like a chicken rib to him, so he is not prepared to waste Itachi's eyes. He is planning to leave it for Quan. After all, an ordinary kaleidoscope will always have a day when the pupils are exhausted. At this time, the system began to recover awesome. Successful recycling. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the second Goyu Sharingan and Uzhibo bloodline. Successful recycling. Congratulations to the host for obtaining a Jade Will Eye and Uzi Wave bloodline. Night Moon closes her eyes and prepares to receive the next gift from the system. At the same time, he placed his hand on Quan's shoulder and stepped on the weasel under his feet with one foot. At the same time, the root of the group that received the order to attack also launched an attack on the Night Moon. Fire Escape. Flame Bullet. Wind Escape. Great Breakthrough. Earth Done, Earth Stab. With tacit cooperation, the people at the root are releasing various fancy ninjutsu techniques, including mixed ninjutsu. And for those who are slow to seal, they take out Kowu, tie an explosive talisman on it, and then throw it fiercely at the Night Moon. Moreover, at the moment when all attacks are released, those skilled in earth evasion also construct a thick earth wall in front of them to prevent them from being affected. The entire process is seamless without any unnecessary actions. Tuanzang nodded in satisfaction upon seeing this. This was the power under his hands. What a pity. I hope it won't hurt my kaleidoscope. In Tuanzang's view, facing such a dense attack, there is absolutely no possibility of survival for the three members of Yeyue. Even if Yeyue releases Susanohu again, it won't work. It's the power of unity. No matter how strong your personal strength is, facing the siege of hundreds of people is also difficult to support. Boom boom. Bang. The sound of explosions was incessant, and the bombing lasted for a whole minute before the momentum began to weaken slightly. Even the earthen walls defended by Tuanzang and others would not have been able to withstand the aftermath of this attack if it weren't for the constant input of chakras by the Tuanzang ninjas. The earthen wall in front of them gradually collapsed, and only Tuanzang and others saw the effect of this attack. With the encirclement they formed as the boundary, the originally flat streets and dense houses inside have now disappeared. Instead, there is a huge pit with a radius of tens of meters and a depth of tens of meters. The center of the huge pit is still emitting smoke, making it difficult for everyone to see the situation inside. But Tuanzang waved his hand and said, "Find the bodies of the three of them. If they still exist, pull them out." Yes. A few roots behind Tuanzai responded, and then quickly entered the thick smoke. Ah! Don't! However, in the next moment, those few people let out a piercing scream. Tuanzang's face suddenly turned ugly and he said, How? How? Can. Is this your method? The lazy voice of Yi Yu rang out, "For me, it's really not painful or itchy." A hurricane blew by, the smoke and dust dispersed, and the Night Moon appeared intact in front of everyone, pulling the spring and stepping on the weasel. He doesn't even have any wrinkles on his body. And not far away, the first few roots that rushed in were already lying in a pool of blood. Quan calmly shook the sword in his hand and threw away the bloodstains on the tip of the sword. A few miscellaneous fish, there's no need for Brother Yi Yu to take action. Damn it. Tuanzai growled with gritted teeth, "Night Moon, you must die today." Ha ha ha. However, when Yi Yu heard his words, she immediately burst out laughing. Really? Who gave you the confidence? Are these miscellaneous fish under your command? Although the people at the root have extremely thin emotions under the training of Tuanzang, they are also furious when they hear this. Seeing this, Yi Yu couldn't help but give a cold smile. Anyway, let me show you what true power is. As soon as the words fell, an orange materialized chakra appeared, and in an instant, it returned to the appearance of Tuanzang when he first appeared. Susanohu. Third form. It's not over yet. Yi Yu shouted, and Susanohu changed again. I saw that Susanohu, dressed in the armor of the Woodiangu, began to grow in all aspects, while also carrying the night moon and spring into the sky continuously. Tuanzang and others quickly retreated wildly upon seeing the situation. When they retreated 100 meters away and looked back again, their eyes widened in surprise, and a sense of fear surged from the bottom of their hearts enveloped them. What kind of monster is this? Standing in front of them is a 100-meter-tall orange giant. The giant holds the Buddha's soul sword in his left hand and the 8 nostrils mirror in his right hand. He wears a wine jug with 10 fist swords around his waist and a pair of equally high huge wings behind him. Yi Yu held the hand of the spring and hung in the air inside the head of the giant, looking up at the group of ants under her feet. Susanohu. Perfect body. Night Moon looked at Tuanzang, who looked like ants, and said, Tuanzang, are you afraid? Dong. Tuanzang forcefully swung his cane downwards and plunged it deeply into the ground, as if this could eliminate his inner fear. He wanted to speak up and refute, but his words reached his throat. He looked at the whole thing with his eyes, and then swallowed it again. Tuanzang shouted in his heart, unwilling, how could the strength of the night moon grow so quickly? He knew that with his own and his subordinates' roots, he could no longer stop the night moon in this state. Not yet in battle, already timid. Tuanzang, see clearly, this is the true power. At this point, Susanohu had a move. It raised the Buddha's soul sword in its hand high and then swung it down suddenly. Whoosh! A huge sword energy visible to the naked eye was thrown from the tip of the sword, charging straight towards Tuanzang and others. Experienced Tuanzang barely managed to dodge with his instant body, but the roots behind him were not so lucky. The sword energy plowed past without any obstruction, and hundreds of people died instantly. But the sword energy still fades without diminishing, leaving a crack on the ground that is more than 10 meters deep and cannot be seen at a glance. The barrier specially set up for the entire Uchiha clan is broken in front of sword energy. At this moment, the sword energy still had no intention of disappearing. It cut straight through the tall wall of my village, smashed the defense barrier of my, and finally collided with a cliff. After a moment, a burst of white light shone and the mountain was cut in half vertically. The entire wooden leaf also woke up under this attack. Is this the power of God? At the scene, a dry and astringent root swallowed and spat, and then collapsed to the ground. However, Yi Yu ignored the group of ants at the root and instead looked at the unconscious weasel under her feet. At this moment, Itachi's body began to twist inexplicably. Hee hee. After waiting for so long, the fish finally caught the bait.